Hey guys, Jody here, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Jody, and on my channel I talk about Broadway, wearing a Broadway t-shirt, torch song, and books. And in today's video, I'll be talking about books, and I'll be talking about books that I ended up buying because, I really like the cover or I really like the title. Because I feel like a lot of times when I go to the bookstore, sometimes I have books in mind that I hear others talking about that sound interesting to me that I'm like, yes, I want to pick that up to read. And a lot of other times I'll just, browse the aisle and come across a book that sounds interesting to me. And usually what makes me pick up that book is the title grabs my attention or the cover grabs my attention. And I feel like a lot of times many of us buy books, you know, for that reason where the title grabs our attention or the cover grabs our attention before we read what it's about, and then we read what it's about, and then we're like, yes, this is something I might be interested in reading. So yeah, that's what I'll be talking about today. I'll be talking about, I believe, 7 books. I have the books right here. I'll lift them up for a second. Hopefully I don't drop anything. These are the books I'll be talking about, and I have read all but 3 of these books, and even the ones I haven't read, you know, they all have like based on like the synopsis and whatnot, they all have a very existential like feel to them, sad books if you will. And I feel like a lot of times for me in particular, if I see a title that kind of seems sad to me, I'm like, or the cover seems sad, I'm like, or a sad vibe if you will, I'm like, I want to read those books. I feel like my favorite genre is starting to become more and more sad books, because I feel like those are the stories that stay with me and they have more of an impact with me. I mean, any genre, any story can have an impact for anyone, and that's just the genre that these days I'm gravitating more towards, wanting to read more books of. But yeah, I'll talk about the ones that I guess, let's see what the order is. I guess I'll talk about the ones that I guess it's going to be a mixture of haven't read and read, because I've read like 4 of these books, so I have an idea of what some of these are about. But yeah, I would say they're all like existential like stories. So yeah. So this is a book that I picked up a few years before I ended up reading it. It's called All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. But what I think this book is probably more talked about now. It was probably really talked about when it came out originally, but I would say it's maybe possibly more talked about now because Netflix made an original a movie. It was made into a Netflix film, I believe in 2020. But what made me pick up this book was, I mean, as maybe for most people, the cover is just beautiful. They're like little squares, which once you read the story, the cover, like, it symbolizes some stuff in the story. These are actually like sticky like notes, and yeah, it means something, the cover. But this is, despite having a really cute, like colorful cover, this is a extremely heavy story, extremely sad story. But this is like a book I really enjoyed reading. It is a very sad, heavy story, like I said. So just know that if you decide to pick this up, the cover's cute and everything, but it is a very heavy story. But yeah, I'll just read you a little of what the book's about, so you maybe have an idea of if it's interests you or not. It's here we go. Theodore Finch is fascinated by death. Every day he thinks of ways he might die, but every day he also searches for and manages to find something to keep him here and alive and awake. Violet Markey lives for the future, counting the days until graduation, where she can escape her small Indiana town and her aching grief in the wake of her sister's death. When Finch and Violet meet on the edge of the bell tower at school, 6 stories above the ground, it's unclear who saves whom. Soon it's only with Violet that Finch can be himself, and it's only with Finch that Violet forgets to count away the days and start living them. But as Violet's world grows, Finch's begins to shrink. I'm sorry. I haven't read the synopsis in a while, so it took me a minute to sometimes I just mess up when I read. What can I say? But yeah, this is like a really it's just a really wonderful story. It's very sad though, like I said. But and if you didn't, I mentioned already, but Netflix made a film adaptation, and I watched it, and it's a very well done adaptation. If you like the book, you'll definitely like the movie as well. But yeah, so this is one of my favorite book covers. Okay. Next up is a book I actually haven't read, but this actually is a book I did hear someone talking about on YouTube at some point. And, you know, honestly, if I hadn't been aware of hearing about it on BookTube, YouTube, I probably would have picked it up myself anyway, because the title is Anxious People, and I am an anxious person. So, yeah, this book is probably written for me because I'm always anxious. I have high anxiety, and you know, whatever, right? But yeah, this is by Fredrik Backman, and I actually have a few of his books. Up here I have A Man Called Ove. I haven't read, I guess despite owning a few of his books at this point, I haven't read anything yet, but this is definitely one I hope to read, hopefully before the year's over, but if not, next year. But yeah, it's one of those titles that, you know, grabs my attention because, like I said, I have anxiety at times, like everyone else. But I guess I'll read you a little bit of the back of the synopsis to give you an idea of if this book interests you as well. Plus, the cover is really nice as well. Nice cover. Yeah. Okay, looking at real estate isn't usually a life or death situation, but an apartment open house becomes just that when a failed bank robber bursts in and takes a group of 8 strangers hostage. Each of them carries a lifetime of grievances, hurts, secrets, and passions that are ready to boil over. None of them is entirely who they appear to be. In short, they are the worst group of hostages in the world. But as the minutes tick by, they begin to suspect that the criminal mastermind holding them hostage might be in more need of rescuing than they are. As the authorities and media surround the premises, these reluctant allies will reveal surprising truths about themselves and set in motion a chain of events so unexpected that even they can hardly explain what happens next. Anxious People is an ingeniously constructed story about the enduring power of friendship, forgiveness, and hope, the things that save us, and even in the most anxious of times. Wow. I actually haven't read, this is one of those books I just picked up because I heard it was supposed to be great. But any story that talks about friendship, because, honestly, you know, that's not something I have much of. So these days, growing up, I had a group of friends, but, you know, at some point, I wasn't cool enough to hang out in the group, I guess, but, so that's the last time I really had friendship in that sense. But I always appreciate stories about friendship because friendship is one of life's greatest gifts. But yeah, I really like this cover. I really like the title. That's a eye-catching title for me personally with anxiety. But in case you didn't know, I haven't watched it yet because I like to read the book then watch the adaptation. But Netflix did make a TV adaptation of this, so in case you weren't aware, if you read the book, you know, there's that. But this sounds like a really great story, and hopefully I'll get to it. I don't know, I've been in a huge reading slump lately. I am currently reading No Exit by Taylor Adams. I really like it, but you know, I haven't, usually I try to read every night, and I haven't been reading, I don't know if I've read in the last few days or maybe week, but you know, if I'm like feeling sad, it's just like, it's really hard to enjoy anything, even TV and everything, and I used to love TV. I don't watch much TV these days either, but you know, whatever, right? Next up is a book I have read. It's called Sweetbitter by Stephanie Danler. Danler. But yeah, I read this book. This was a book I picked up at the store because I heard it was going to get an adaptation. And so, but you know, regardless of that, this is how cool is this cover? It's like so sharp. It's like a glass breaking, kind of like a metaphor for the story, like, you know, it's transforming into something else, and the main character kind of transforms, you know, grows up as the story goes on, kind of like a metaphor, I guess, if you will. But I really like the cover. It's just so eye-catching and beautiful and interesting. But yeah, this is a book I did pick up because Starz made a TV adaptation of this book. I want to say 2018, 2019, 2017, 2018, around that time. But there were 2 seasons of it made, and I really actually thought the adaptation was, you know, it was a really I really liked it. I think I liked season 1 more than season 2, but I really liked this book. This is a very good book about, it's kind of like the main character moves away from her hometown and she just wants a chance to start over her life. And during the course of that process, she makes mistakes and she learns about herself and she grows, she just becomes an independent person and, all those things. But I really like this book. I just really like this book. I like this story. It's one of my favorite books, really. But I'll read you a bit of the back to give you an idea of what it's about. Newly arrived in New York City, 22-year-old Tess lands a job working front of house at a celebrated downtown restaurant. What follows her is her education in champagne and cocaine, love and lust, dive bars, and fine dining. As she learns to navigate the chaotic, enchanting, punishing life she has chosen. The story of a young woman's coming of age set against the glitzy, grimy backdrop of elite restaurants. In Sweetbitter, Stephanie Danler, sometimes, like, when I'm reading these things, the synopsis, like, I know how to pronounce these words, but all of a sudden, like, my brain forgets how to. But deftly conjures a non-stop and high adrenaline world and evokes the infinite possibilities, the unbreakable beauty, and the fragility and brutality of being young and adrift. Yeah, I really like this. I believe also it's set in early 2000s, so, before, like, technology took over. So if you like that kind of, like, time period, I believe that. I definitely remember that being a thing in the show, but I read this quite a while ago. But yeah, this is one of my favorite books, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for, like, a book about someone, like, making mistakes, learning about themselves, and growing up and stuff like that in the 2000s time period. At least from what I remember, I'm pretty sure it was around that time. But yeah, great cover. That's what would have caught my eye if I didn't know about the TV show. But yeah, the TV show was I forget if I mentioned this. It was on Stars. So if you have Stars, I guess check it out. And this is a book that I haven't read, but I'll explain how I kind of know the story anyway. So it's The Leftovers by Tom Perrotta, and I just absolutely love this cover. It's very it's symbolic of, like, what happens in the story, and yeah, this is a book that, if I wasn't aware of the TV adaptation, it might have been a book that would have caught my eye regardless, because it has a very existential vibe. I mean, look at this cover and look at the title. So yeah, I am a huge fan of the TV show The Leftovers that was on HBO from, I believe, 2014 to 2017. In my opinion, one of the best TV series that's ever been on television besides 6 Feet Under, and a TV show that just really never got the I guess the acclaim it deserved at the time that it was on television. It's I guess I'll read you the back of the synopsis, because sometimes I don't talk as eloquently as what is written on the cover. But yeah, I'll give you an idea of what the story's about. What if, whoosh, right now, with no explanation, a number of us simply vanished? Would some of us think it was the rapture? Would some of us fall apart? Would others go on just as we did before the world turned upside down? That's what the confused citizens of tidy suburban Mapleton have to figure out. Kevin Garney, the mayor, wants to speed up the healing process, even as his own family has autonomized in the wake of what's become known as the sudden departure. Kevin's wife, Lori, has left to join a homegrown cult, the Guilty Remnant. His son, Tom, is gone too, dropped out of college to follow a shady prophet named Holy Wayne and join his healing hug movement. Only Kevin's teenage daughter, Jill, is still with him, opaque and drifting since October 14th. Kevin yearns to connect with her, even as he is distracted by a new relationship with Nora Durst, the saddest woman in Mapleton, trying to cope with the disappearance of her entire family. With heart, intelligence, and a real ability to illuminate the struggles of ordinary people, Tom Perrotta has written a startling, thought-provoking novel about love, loss, and connection. Yeah, I haven't read this, but this is definitely, I know the story because I watched the show. And that being said, the show is one of my favorite shows of all time. So I will still read this book at some point, but I just had to have it either way. I mean, The Leftovers, I mean, it's just like, and the cover, it's, you don't get more existential than this cover and this title. And it definitely would have caught my eye if I didn't know about the TV adaptation. But once I was such a fan of the show, I had to get the book. And I haven't read it yet, but I am really curious because, if there's any similarities or differences between the book and the show. It's probably more similar than not because Tom Perrotta was heavily involved in the making of the show. But I highly recommend the show to watch if you like existential stories. It's a very sad and heavy story as well. Yeah, great cover, great title, great story from the TV show. I haven't read the book yet, but if you've read the book, let me know what your thoughts are on it. It's probably very similar to the show, which means it's amazing. And this book that I'm talking about is one of the only books I'm talking about that was a new release for this year, I guess you could say. All these other books were made or released several years ago. And this is a book that caught my eye at the bookstore because it's cover. It's like, it's that cover where, if you're feeling sad inside, it's like, wow, this is me on a book cover. And that's really good, actually, by Monica Heisey. But this book cover, like right now, this is how I'm feeling inside. But it's like, we all feel like that sometimes. And this cover is so, it grabbed my attention because I'm like, what am I doing on a book cover? But anyway, what can I say? I'm sad most of the time. But yeah, I really like this cover, and from what I've heard other people talking about since I have purchased this, is I hear it's really good. And this is definitely a book I was hoping to have read by now, but like I said, I've been in a reading slump for most of this year. I have finished reading 7 books. I'm currently reading my 8th book, but I would have liked to have read more, but sometimes the sadness gets to you. But and what can I say? It got to me this year, and it affected my reading. But I'll let you know what it's about. Here we go. Maggie is fine. She's doing really good, actually. Sure, she's broke. Graduate thesis on something obscure is going nowhere, and her marriage only lasted 608 days. But at the ripe old age of 29, Maggie is determined to embrace her new life as a surprisingly young divorcee. Now she has the time to take up 9 hobbies, eat hamburgers at 4 a.m., and get back out there, sex-wise. With the support of her tough, loving academic advisor Maris, her newly divorced friend Amy, and her group chat, naturally, Maggie barrels through her first year of single life, intermittently dating, occasionally waking up on the floor, and asking herself tough questions along the way. Laugh Out Loud funny and filled with sharp observations, really good actually, is a tender and bittersweet comedy that lays bare the uncertainties of modern life, friendship, and our search for that thing we like to call happiness, in quotes. This is a remarkable debut from an unforgettable new voice in fiction. So this might be the first time I actually read the synopsis because, like I said, this cover, this is all I needed to know to when I buy this book. Plus, when I went to Barnes & Noble, it was $5 off the price. So I love buying a book when it's on sale. What can I say? But yeah, I think I'm really going to like this story. It sounds very relatable and existential, and I like the cover, and I just think I'm going to like this. If you've read it, let me know your thoughts. Next up is a book that screams like existential because you're like wondering, what if? And that's it. Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think at this point I do own all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, but this is the only one I've read, but at least I've read one. So if you've read all of her books, let me know which one you think I should read next. But I loved, this is a book that when, I first started getting into reading again, I would buy books based on the title or the cover. And this title is, I just love, Maybe in Another Life. Because, if you're familiar with the movie with Gwyneth Paltrow, Sliding Doors, it's a very, what if, I did this differently, what would have happened? And this has a very similar storyline to that. Not the same story, obviously, but it's like, what if what if I did something different? My life would have potentially gone a different way. And I always love stories like that. Like, you can even tell in the picture, like, this is like one storyline, this is another. Like, things are a little the same but different. And, I just love the cover and I love the title. And also, I think at some point, Taylor Jenkins Reid's all of her book covers got like new covers and they all like mesh with one another, if you will. They're very similar covers now, and I'm like so happy that I got this book cover or got this book when before that happened, because the new covers are they're fine, but they don't really have a lot of personality. Her original covers, wow, what personality! I mean, I think in the back of these books they show like her I'm not sure if they do that. Some of her books do. They show like the other books that she's written with the other other covers, and they're just all so unique and interesting. And I don't know why they would have changed the covers. Like these covers are so much nicer in my opinion. But yeah, I'll read you a little bit of the back. At the age of 29, Hannah Marden still has no idea what she wants to do with her life. She has lived in 6 different cities and has held countless meaningless jobs since college. But on the heels of a disastrous breakup, she has finally returned to her hometown of Los Angeles to celebrate her first night back. Her best friend Gabby takes Hannah out to a bar where she bumps into her high school boyfriend Ethan. It's just past midnight when Gabby asks Hannah if she's ready to go. Ethan quickly offers to give her a ride later if she wants to stay. Hannah hesitates. What happens if she leaves with Gabby? What happens if she leaves with Ethan? In concurrent storylines, Hannah lives out the effects of each decision. Quickly, these parallel universes develop into surprisingly different stories with far-reaching consequences for Hannah and the people around her, raising questions including, is anything meant to be? How much of our lives is determined by chance? And perhaps most compellingly, is there such a thing as a soulmate? Hannah believes there is, and in both worlds she believes she's found him. Like I said, if you like stories where, there are 2 different, like, I don't want to say timelines, but like stories in this, because one delves into what happens if she did one thing, and the one storyline is what happens if she did something different. And yeah, I really like this book. I would say if you like Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing, you'll probably like this as well. And what could I say? One of my favorite covers of all time, one of my favorite titles of all time. Because we always wonder, maybe in another life, what if kind of stuff. So there's that. And the last book I'll be talking about is, as someone who doesn't have like many friends or much extended family, sometimes you wonder like what happens when you'll end up alone. And what can I say? This title was eye-catching for me. It's very existential title, but I think at the end of the day, this book isn't like a super sad, heavy book, but more like an uplifting book from the synopsis of it that I remember reading. But it's How to Not Die Alone by Richard Roper. Yeah, I bought this book actually years ago, and normally years ago I would wait for a paperback. But this title grabbed my attention so much that I bought it when it was in hardcover. So, which, hardcover is usually more expensive, so, that's why I usually buy paperback, but these days I'm like, whatever. But yeah, this title just grabbed my attention because, it's a pretty eye-catching title. And it also is a really nice cover as well. And then that's why I said this seems like a existential sad story, but also maybe a possibly uplifting story as well, because it's some of the cover says it's never too late to start living. So sometimes I have to remind myself that. Okay, so I'll read you what it's about, because honestly, this is a book I primarily bought because of the cover and title, and let's find out what it's about. No one wants to die without having really lived. Andrew has been feeling stuck. For years, he's worked at a thankless public health job, searching for the next of kin of those who die alone. Luckily, he goes home to a loving family every night. At least that's what his co-workers believe. Then he meets Peggy. A misunderstanding has left Andrew trapped in his own white lie and his lonely apartment. When new employee Peggy breezes into the office like a breath of fresh air, she makes Andrew feel truly alive for the first time in decades. Could there be more to a life than this? But telling Peggy the truth could mean losing everything. For 20 years, Andrew has worked to keep his heart safe, forgetting one important thing: how to live. Maybe it's time for him to start. I feel like this sounds like a really, in many ways relatable story, because we're all afraid, of living sometimes, and sometimes we can get stuck in our own sadness, if you will. And sometimes someone comes along to remind you, you know, to live. And this sounds like one of those stories. But yeah, a book that definitely caught my eye because of the title. But yeah, let's see. I was just thinking if I recognize anybody's names on the blurbs. Don't think I do. Alright, sorry about that. But yeah, these are the books I talked about that caught my eye because of the title or the cover, which I feel like is, at the end of the day, something we all do when we go to the bookstore. So these are the books I talked about. But let me know, you know, what are some of your favorite book title, book cover, book title. I don't know how to talk today. What are some of your favorite, you know, book covers or titles of books? You know, I just, you know, let me know what kind, you know, let me know. What a day. So yeah, let me know that, you know, because these were some of my favorite ones. I would say, let me try to pick my favorite one out of the bunch. I say currently just because I feel like I can relate to it the most. This is currently my favorite book cover. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today's video. I was all over the place because that's just what it was. But thanks so much for watching, and until next time, bye.